This video is about how to use the Gemini API to create your own AI web apps that use generative AI. For this tutorial, I'll be using Next.js. So step 1 is creating a new Next.js project by writing the command npx create next app. I'll be using 13.4 and then name your project. I will name mine Gemini Next app. Once your Next.js project is done setting up, then install the Google AI SDK in your Next.js project by running npm install @google/generative AI. We'll be using this library later. Alright, so we will delete all the boilerplate code from page.js. So this gives us a blank slate to create anything we want. Step 2 is go to aistudio.google.com/app/API key and you will get an option to create API key. So click on that option. Then select any one of your Google Cloud projects, and if you don't have one, create one. And then I will click on create API key in existing project. And then I will copy this API key. Create a new .env file in the root directory of your project. And inside it I will create an environment variable by the name of Gemini API key and paste it here. Okay. Step 3 is to create an API route. So API routes are basically functions that handle data request and response, right? In Next.js, we store our API routes in a folder API inside the app directory. I will create a new folder by the name of API. And all the code, API related code is stored in API folder so that there is a separation between UI related code and API related code. Inside the API folder, I will create another folder generate, within which I will create a file called route.js. So the code in this file will correspond or map to the API route /API/generate of your application. So let's write our API route. So I will start by importing the Google Generative AI library that we installed. So I will write Google Generative AI. I imported it from @google/generative AI. This is the package that we installed earlier. Then create an asynchronous function to handle post requests. So export async post with two parameters as always, request and response. I will write a try catch block now. First thing we're going to do is access the API key by creating an instance of the Google Generative API that we imported here, right? So I will write const gen AI equals new Google Generative AI, and in the parentheses I will write process.env Gemini API key. Okay, so this is the name of our environment variable which stores the API key, right? Next, I will create a variable model which stores or defines the model that we are going to use. So model will be gen AI dot get generative model Gemini Pro. Okay, so we have initialized a model. Now we will need a prompt to send to this model, which will come to us as the request data, which will be sent to this post request. Create a variable called data to retrieve the data from the request body. Await req.json. Now we'll store the prompt in a variable called prompt, extracting the text from the JSON. We will pass this prompt to our generative model.generate content, and I will simply pass the prompt. And then we will wait for the model to generate content and then store that content in a variable called response. Response is await result.response. And finally, the final output will be stored in a variable called output. So output is await response.text. Now we will finally return the output as a response object. So I will say return next response.json output. Okay, and then finally we will write a catch block as well to catch any errors and console log it. Alright, now that we have our API route ready, the final step is to use this API route in our client. I will start by writing use client and the beginning of the page.js. If you don't do that, you won't be able to use state variables, which are not allowed in server-side components. I'll store the prompt that we are going to send in a variable called prompt. So I'll just say simply write quote of the day, let's say. Then I will write and we'll set the default value as this is a Next.js project. We'll display the output in a paragraph in the body. Let's see if it's running properly or not. So I will just run npm run dev. So it is running. I will slightly modify the CSS, set the font as serif and the text size as 3XL. Now we'll write an asynchronous function to send post request to the API route that we just created. So const generate text equals async, then we'll add try catch block and use the fetch method to send the HTTP request. So response equals await fetch. Our API route is /API/generate. Method will be post. Headers will be content type application/JSON, and the body will be, of course, the prompt that we defined in the variable, and we'll be sending this prompt to the API route as the request data. Then we'll send the request data in a variable called data await response.json, and if the response is okay, we will set the output state variable, set output as data.output, and if it is not okay, then I will just display the error instead of the output. So set output data.error. So I'll write a catch block console.error error. So this generate text function is going to send the API request to the route that we created. Now when will this generate text function be triggered? Let's say it will be triggered when the text on the screen is clicked. So I will set an on-click listener, on-click generate text. So when you click this text, it is supposed to display quote of the day, which is the prompt. Alright, so it's working.